Welcome into the CHGO Blackhawks podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook. Download the app and use promo code CHGO when you sign up. Thanks for joining us on this short notice emergency podcast, our second in as many days. And the worst kept secret in hockey is that now nearly official. Patrick Kane is indeed going to be a New York Ranger in about an hour and 9 minutes, an hour and 11 minutes, whatever the clock says. I have two different clocks in my office, so it's going to happen.
Oh, Mr. Two Clocks.
Yeah, got that CHGO money. Jay Zawaski here with Greg Boysen and Mario Tirabassi. And fellas, we knew it was coming. Now we know the return. Let's give you the rundown real quick. So the Blackhawks send Patrick Kane to the New York Rangers. In exchange, the Blackhawks get a 2024 second and a 2023 fourth round pick. If the Rangers reach the Eastern Conference Final this year, that second round pick becomes a first in 2024 or 2025. The Coyotes are also involved here. They pick up a third round pick from the Rangers for taking on the extra 50% of Patrick Kane's salary. So what can we count on? A 2023 second and fourth, and everybody should be rooting hard for the New York Rangers. That includes you, Greg.
Nope. We've got two picks in both of those first rounds already. Screw the Rangers.
Yeah. So, if they reach the Eastern Conference Final, that becomes a first-round pick in 2024 or 2025. So, hey, here we are. This is what we've been waiting for basically since the end of last year. It's finally upon us. So, fellas, how are we feeling?
I think the length of time it took to get here, I think, is taking a lot of the sting off. It's still not fun to see, a Blackhawks legend not finishing their career here. Like I think a lot of people thought was going to be the case. So it's tough. It sucks, but the writing was on the wall for a long time that this outcome could be a real possibility, and it died down for a bit there, but then it came roaring back in the last few weeks. And I think this is the end of a very long, very successful era of Blackhawks hockey. And it's tough, but it is what it is. This is part of a rebuild. Not everyone gets to see the end, gets to have the happy ending that they might hope for.
Yeah, I think my biggest feeling is just like relief. It's over. It's done. This saga has been going on all season long. The last couple of weeks, it's just been, will he, won't he? What are we going to get? It's just like, okay, here it is. And yeah, the return's not spectacular, but this is another case where, and I think we're guilty of it too, local fans and local reporters overvalue their star players more than the actual other teams do. So this was a situation. Kyle Davidson had no leverage, very little leverage, and you're trading for 3 months of a guy that is having the worst season of his career and may be hurt. So, I mean, getting a second, maybe a first round pick and a fourth round pick, it's probably as good as it was going to get. It's not what we were hoping for. It's not what we thought we were going to get in the beginning of the year, but when you constantly see things in YouTube chats and in Twitter and all over the place like Lafreniere and Kako, and regardless of who's saying it, if it's said enough time, people are going to start believing it and think that that's what the actual trade value is, even though those are not the discussions actually happening behind closed doors. So then when the actual return comes, people are going to be disappointed.
Yeah, and I think part of that is why we've been trying to, if you've been with us all year or part of the year, whatever, we've been trying to kind of set you up for this because, look, it was very likely that Kane would give one team that he wanted to go to, and that was the New York Rangers. And you heard his disappointment when they acquired Tarasenko, and it felt like that ship had sailed. But then all of a sudden, the Rangers do some math and figure out, oh, wait, maybe we can actually afford Patrick Kane here. If we do some maneuvering and we bite the bullet real hard for a couple nights roster-wise, we can make it work. And then Kane says, okay, if you can make it work with the Rangers, I'm in. So for those of you that are upset with the return, let's put the shoe on the other foot, right? Let's say the Hawks are ready to win again. And, just Nathan McKinnon is going to be an unrestricted free agent for the Avalanche. And the Hawks want to add him at the deadline. And he's the only team he's going to go. The Hawks are the only team he wants to go to. You're not going to give up a boatload to get him. You're going to say, hey, we're going to give you something we feel is fair. We're not going to sell the farm for a guy that wants to be here, and you're sort of obligated to trade him. So here's a second, here's a fourth. If Kane helps us reach the conference final, great. We'll call it a first, and everybody is satisfied. And look, it's more as this was sort of approaching the last few days. This is more than I thought they would get. Am I disappointed they didn't change the franchise with this trade? Of course, but I'm not mad about it. I'm not mad at Kyle Davidson. I'm not mad at Patrick Kane. It is what it is. When you're the second best, at worst, Patrick Kane is the second best player in franchise history, right? You get certain privileges with that, including getting to dictate where you go. He got to dictate where he went, and the Hawks, instead of losing him for nothing at the end of the summer, they get a second-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and that second potentially becomes a first. So we'll see. It's just I understand it's an emotional day, and I don't want to lose sight of that, right? I know there's a lot of Hawks fans in their fields today, and we're not going to tell you to not feel that way, but I want you to think about it from the business aspect of it, the trade aspect of it, that they did about as good as they could do, all things considered.
The Rangers were prepared to get Patrick Kane this season, and when that ship seemed to have sailed, what they were budgeting to spend on him went to getting Vladimir Tarasenko. And when it came out that Kane still wanted to go to the Rangers and was playing like vintage Patrick Kane, and the option to get Patrick Kane back to the Rangers came up again, well, then they were in a position where we've kind of given up everything we thought we were going to have to. But with Kane saying, well, I was disappointed in not being traded to the Rangers, that made it pretty evident that, the door wasn't closed. And now they kind of had to scramble and figure out what they could do to make it work. And it did them a service that Kane really said, I just want to go to the Rangers. So that took any leverage that the Blackhawks and Kyle Davidson could have had away. So this is the best option that probably the Rangers could have afforded to offer with what they want to try and accomplish. And this is probably the best that the Blackhawks were going to get, because if they try and pull too much from the Rangers, then they can say, well, maybe we're happy with whatever we got, going into the deadline and whatnot. And we're not going to give up this much for Patrick Kane, but we'll be fine otherwise. So to make something happen, to make it worthwhile for both sides, this is probably the best that you're going to do. I know last night on the TV broadcast, Charlie Romeliotis said, the best the Blackhawks might get is a single second round pick. They get a little bit more than that. And if the Rangers make the Eastern Conference Finals, it's more than that. So now you just hope that the Rangers win 2 rounds and Toronto wins a round, and the draft picks become as best as possible in those scenarios. So it doesn't take away I don't think any of this takes away from Patrick Kane and his legacy. I think it's just a little bit of a sour taste at the end of everything that people will get over in time.
Yeah, it's I wonder if Kane had decided, I only want to go to the Rangers 2 weeks earlier before they traded for Tarasenko. I bet you the return would have been better, because then they wouldn't have already had Tarasenko. They would have had that extra first round pick. So again, not, sitting on the pot and not taking a shit hurt the Blackhawks here on the return. If he would have just said 3 weeks ago, hey, I want to go to the Rangers, we could have got what the Blues got for Tarasenko, which was a better return.
Yeah.
So, and it would have changed the whole scape of the trend. But hindsight 2020, you can't. It is what it is. And I'm not mad at Patrick Kane. Go do your thing. And this was obvious to me as the season progressed that the Blackhawks were ready to move on from 88 and 19. They were ready to move on from the Stanley Cup era. And I think, Kane, I don't think was going to be, if they didn't trade him, I don't think he was going to be re-signed. So now, yes, a little bit of an underwhelming return, but the Rangers don't get the 3 Stanley Cups and all those goals that he scored over here over 16 seasons. They get the guy that had 9 goals on the season up until a week ago. They're not getting any of that stuff. They're not getting Patrick Kane in his prime. So that's why we're attaching, and a lot of the fans are attaching their hearts and their memories to that overtime goal in Philadelphia and that Conn Smythe run in 2013 and all that stuff. And it's worth so much more to them because we lived through all of that. But that's not part of the trade. The part of the trade is a guy on the downside of his career that they're getting for 3 months. So I think it was a fair return. And, it's better than letting him walk away and signing with the Rangers next year and getting nothing.
Right. And I think that's there's a lot of people online today and a lot of people in the chat that are wondering, what if he signs in the summer? What if he comes back? Anything is possible. But I am not holding my breath that Patrick Kane comes back anytime soon. If he wants to end his career at the end of his playing days with the Blackhawks on like a 1-year deal or something like that in a couple of years, I could see that happening. I don't see him coming back this summer and being like, "Hey, I'm back." I don't see that. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, no, it feels like the Band-Aid has been ripped off, and I think. I think it's hard for fans to say, well, why would the Hawks want to get rid of Patrick Kane? Like, why would they want to move on? He's still really good. He's still an effective player. It's not like he's going to be taking a roster spot from anybody. We talked about this last week, and there's truth in that. I also think if you watch the way the team has played since Kane has been out of the lineup, it's different. It's a different team that plays a different way, and Patrick Kane's presence and Jonathan Toews' presence on and off the ice is intimidating and is ever present and is something that if you're trying to get the next generation of Blackhawks going, having those guys around, it might not hurt the team on the ice, but I do think it can sort of stunt the development of your next leadership group. Now, honestly, the next leadership group probably isn't completely here yet. It's going to be Seth Jones because he's here for the next 8 years, and that's a given. Yeah. Maybe it's Max Domi because we've talked about it all the time that even if he gets traded, he might come back. I saw Mark Lazarus say that today as well. Maybe Max Domi's a guy you slap an A on. If you don't move Connor Murphy, that's a guy. But the true leadership of the next great era of Blackhawks are probably not on the roster yet. So you want to have those guys come in with a clean slate and not have to look over their shoulder and say, here's 36-year-old Patrick Kane who is scoring 50 points, but he's still Patrick Kane. That's still number 88. And I still have to, kiss the ring and pay the respects and defer to him on the ice. You want this to be a clean slate. And there's no way to have a clean slate with Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews on the team.
Just like it was when Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane joined the team. It was their team from day one. Everybody knew it. Like, Toews was the youngest captain in team history. They wasted no time doing that. And we had heard about these guys, and it was their team. Yeah, there was Seabrook and Keith and other parts of the soon-to-be Stanley Cup champions. But when those two arrived, it was their team. So if it's Connor Bedard and Kevin Korchinski next year, or Adam Fantilli and Frank Nerizar, whoever the next core is, they get to have that same clean slate.
And I know the timing isn't the same, but let's just play make-believe here. And let's say Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews come to the Blackhawks when Jeremy Roenick and Chris Chelios are still there, right? Yeah. It's a different thing. It's a different thing. And they don't have the freedom and the ability to grasp that leadership on their own in that sort of a situation.
Yeah, and bringing up Chelios and Roenick, this is for people that became fans as youngsters during this cup run and are now still fans in their late 20s, early 30s. Welcome to what it was like being a Blackhawks fan in the 90s.
Yeah.
Your favorite player gets traded all the time, except it's a little different now. Actually totally different, because Kane is on the downside of his career, and it's the end of his contract, and it's a rebuild. But when guys like Chelios and Roenick and Belfour were traded, they were in their prime and they were given away for nothing. Nothing. And they went on to have Hall of Fame level careers for, in Chelios' case, another decade after that trade. So trust me, we feel the pain, us graybeards. We're used to seeing the superstars get traded, but this is a different situation. In big picture, it sucks. One of the greatest players of all time in this city, not just for the Blackhawks, but in this city, is now going to wear another team's uniform, and it's over, and that sucks. But this is actually an exciting time. This franchise is moving forward. It's trying to do something new and exciting, and holding on to the past, some people want to do that, but moving towards a future and the unknown can be a little scary, but it's also kind of exciting. I'm looking forward to what happens over the next 3, 4, 5 years on who, if anybody, can become that guy. I'm not going to say the next Patrick Kane, because there's not going to be a next Patrick Kane, but who's going to be the next superstar?
Yeah. Good comment from Rockstar80 that I want to get to here in a second. But first, I know we've probably got a lot of people checking us out for the first time. If you are, welcome. Make sure you smash that like button for us on YouTube. I see we've got over 300 people viewing it right now. We appreciate that. Gonna let you know too, after tonight's Hawks Coyotes game, we're going to be on again doing a post-game show and more Patrick Kane conversation. Join us there. So join us there, and check out allchgo.com. That's where everything CHGO lives, from great written content to our CHGO locker with all of our awesome merch. You can find out information on our takeovers, on our tailgates. Tomorrow night, we're going to have a happy hour with everybody, so you can join us for that as well. There's so much great stuff at allchgo.com, so go check that out and make sure you smash that like button if you're watching us here on the YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast later on in the day, make sure you are subscribing and following there as well. The comment here from Rockstar80, and it's a valid one, says 35-year-old Sidney Crosby and 37-year-old Alex Ovechkin aren't stunting their young players' growths. Sure, but are either of those teams Stanley Cup contenders? The answer is no to both of them.
They both missed the playoffs this year.
And when you look down the road for both of those franchises, it's going to be bad for a long time for them. And they're eventually going to have to do exactly what the Blackhawks are doing right now. Maybe not exactly, but something very, very similar. The reality of the hard cap is that the teams that develop well and draft well get punished, because you can't pay everybody that you've drafted well and developed well. You just can't. It just doesn't work that way. You can't pay people fair market price. The Penguins are going for it again. For some reason, with Letang and Crosby and Malkin, they're not going to get anywhere with it. They're not going to win the Stanley Cup, and that is the point. And the clearest path the Hawks have to getting back to where they were, in 2010, 2013, 2015, is to do it this way. It's hard. It's going to suck for a few years, but I promise you, if you stick with it and you watch the prospects develop and you keep up with the rebuild report, another great thing you could read at allchgo.com, you'll see that there is a lot of hope for the future already. And this is just year one or even year zero of the rebuild.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the selling point now of this organization, is now that, Kane and likely Taze their careers are done as Blackhawks. Now it's the next wave. It's the next wave of guys that are coming through. It's the, the 2020, the 2021, 2022 draft classes that are going to be, in the spotlight. And of course, this year's draft class is a huge part of that as well. And the Blackhawks could very well get a guy like Connor Bedard or Adam Fantilli. And, the way that the prospect system has been replenished and is rejuvenated, adding one of those guys continues that upward trajectory of the future future players and prospects that this team can have. And looking at Kyle's $10 super chat here, really appreciate it. Says you guys are doing a great job. Love tuning in. With Kane and likely Taves now gone, who do you view as the cornerstone of the franchise? For now, it feels like it's Kyle Davidson and Luke Richardson. I mean, the Chevy Drive Chicago commercial might go to Luke Richardson and Chris Chelios for the time being. But it's funny. None of those cornerstones are currently playing for this team, and we might not even see them next year. I mean, Lucas Reichel is a really good player. Is he a cornerstone? Maybe. That's yet to be determined. But the cornerstones are some. There might be one yet to be drafted, Connor Bedard. But there's definitely guys that are going to come up in the next couple of years that you can look at and say, hey, I think this is what we're building with. And we kind of touched on it yesterday a little bit. Free agents and trades that Kyle Davidson can sign and acquire down the road. You might add a guy who's that cornerstone as a free agent or in a trade. That's why getting these kinds of draft picks and draft capital is important, because you can, throw the dart at the board and draft a young guy, or you can use it as currency and acquire somebody that you maybe didn't have on your radar before.
John has a comment here in the chat and says the cornerstone is the Blackhawks 2023 first round pick. That's probably correct.
Yeah.
It'll be Bedard, it'll be Adam Fantilli, it'll be Leo Carlson, Matvei Michkov, somebody like that. Because whoever it is, they're going to be your top prospect right away. And you've already got, like Corey says, Nazar, Korchinski, who are doing very well and are being, highly thought of by all prospect watchers. Ethan Del Mastro has had a leadership role for Team Canada. There's a lot of options. We just don't know yet, right? Yeah. When Keith and Seabrook were young pups in the NHL, looking like Bambi on skates, falling over themselves and blowing assignments, no one thought that they were cornerstone players either. It takes time for prospects to develop. And I think that's another thing that, fellas, as the years go on here, we're going to have to remind people, because I know there's a lot of Hawks fans here that jumped on with Kane and Taves that thought, oh, well, first-round picks are good right away. That's not usually the case. Yeah. It takes some time. It takes time for these guys to develop. So, like Lucas Reichel is a really good example. I think there's some people that are impatient. Like, what's the deal? When is this guy going to come up here and be a regular? It takes time. And somebody slick mentions Teuvo Teravainen. In his first years in the NHL, he was a third-line guy, kind of bouncing between center and wing. And a lot of folks, Blackhawks fans, are like, this kid's not the prospect. He's overhyped. You guys are selling him way too hard. And lo and behold, 2-3 years later, he's an all-star type player on one of the best teams in hockey. So it takes time. Be patient. This whole process is going to take your patience. But you've made it this far, right? You're here with us today. Like Kyle Davidson said, jump on the ride, because in the end, the payoff's going to be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, the perfect example of taking time with your top prospects are the New Jersey Devils. They've got 2 number 1 overall picks on their team in Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes, and both of those guys took time. Jack Hughes, he's in his 4th year? Third full year, and he's had some injury problems, but he's a superstar. I don't know if you've watched a lot of New Jersey Devil games out there, but you're going to see him in the playoffs, probably against Patrick Kane and the Rangers. And it's taken him all of these 3 years to get where he's at. And Nico Hischier is another guy that some may still argue that he's maybe wasn't worthy of that number 1 overall pick, but he's a pretty damn good player. And it's taken him 4 or 5 seasons to get to be where he's at right now. So, Jay, you've said it numerous times, Jay, not for every Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves and Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid that are superstars and difference makers from day one, there's Alexis Lafreniere and Jack Hughes, who took some time. Like Lafreniere, they still don't know what they got in him. So hopefully that Connor Bedard kid is in a Blackhawk uniform and he's in that Patrick Kane, Connor McDavid group. Probably will be. But just going forward, patience.
Yeah. Shy Sports Fan says, how long till the Hawks can even compete again? It's hard to say. I think Connor Bedard probably cuts a year off of that. I think even Adam Fantilli, you could make that argument a little bit about. It depends on how these draft picks pan out. Like I saw Scott Powers yesterday mention that Kevin Korchinski might play in the NHL next year. That's not a possibility. I mean, we watched him in prospects camp. We watched him in preseason, and he looked really good. I personally wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't do it.
If we've learned anything from Kyle Davidson, is that he is extremely patient with his top prospects. But what we're saying is some of the guys that have been brought in over the last year plus, are not as far away as it might seem, right? Mm-hmm. You might start seeing some of these meaningful players up in the NHL sooner than you think. Maybe not next year, but the year after. I think Lucas Reichel is a full-timer next year.
He has to be.
He has to be, right? But you could probably see them looking at a playoff spot 2025, maybe, and then really competing in 27, 28, like cup competing.
I think if the young guys keep going on the trajectory that it looks like they're going now, and Davidson makes a couple smart additions either through trades or free agency, I think we might have some games that are worthwhile and competitive late into March and April and maybe into the playoffs 2025-26 season, maybe.
Yeah, I based on the first draft class and that 2020 draft class, we have to give he who shall not be named a little bit of credit here. I know we don't like to do that, but that last draft class,
2021,
his last draft class was pretty decent. It's looking pretty good.
Yeah.
The difference is these guys are being able to develop a little more under the new regime instead of being like, hey, you're good, play here today. Right. But if with the amount of first round, second round, third round picks they have over the next couple of years, and based on what they did last draft, I think the 24-25 season, the Blackhawks could be where the Buffalo Sabres or the Red Wings are right now, where they're like almost there. Like you could see it. You could see it starting to come together. You have identified your stars of the future. You've identified your core. And now it's just about them progressing and getting over the hump and finding those right pieces from the outside to complement what you've built here. So I would say, that 24-25 season is where we really start to see it go from, they're probably going to lose tonight, so we might as well hope they lose to get a better draft pick to go, you know what? These guys, winning's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I'm okay drafting 13th. Let's go out and win some hockey games.
Yeah, they might be around that 2008 Blackhawks vibe.
Yeah, that just on the cusp. And then hopefully by 25, 26, you're going to have a couple of really good free agency classes come through the turnpike with some game-changing players. The Blackhawks are going to have a ton of salary cap space. Who knows? Things can change, but it is pretty obvious to me that Kyle Davidson has said, I have this plan, and I'm sticking to this plan. And so far, he has not deviated or wavered from it one bit. So I don't think, if they have a surprise run next year where they're all of a sudden they're 5 points out of a wild card spot around Christmas, I don't think that changes his way of doing this at all. It doesn't make him go, well, okay, we're going to be buyers this time around. That's the difference between what we have now and what we had previously.
We've got a poll question running right now on the YouTube. Where does Patrick Kane rank among your all-time favorite Blackhawks? The options are favorite, top 3, top 5, top 10. We'll update that at the end of the show. We also have a bunch of new viewers in here. We appreciate it. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube page. We are 50 subscribers away from 26,000, and we've not even launched a year ago. We're coming up on our 1-year anniversary next week, but if we can reach that 26K mark by the time we go off the air here in about 10 minutes, we would greatly appreciate that. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're not already, and of course smash that like button. And I know some people who jumped in late, so why don't we recap the trade here, Steven? I know you've got a graphic made sharing the details. So here's the
beautiful graphic.
Yeah,
I love the green.
The Rangers receive Patrick Kane. The Blackhawks get a 2023 second round and fourth round pick. That second becomes a first in 2024 or 25 if the Rangers reach the Eastern Conference Final this year. The Coyotes had to jump in and take on the other 50% of Kane's salary. For doing so, they get a 2025 third-round pick. So there you go.
And
Blackhawks, Rangers, and Coyotes all had to get together to make this deal happen.
And that's 50% of the retained salary that the Blackhawks are also retaining. So it's really 25% of his total.
Right. It's 50% of the salary going to the Rangers. So it's a quarter of his total. So basically the Rangers are paying just 25% of his salary from here and getting, well, more importantly, getting only 25% of his cap hit. That's the important part. Rangers don't care about what they're physically paying him.
Yeah, right.
Nate says, is that conditional second, top 10 protected in 2024-25? I've not seen that detail yet. This trade is expected to go down officially at 4 p.m. or the minutes right thereafter, because that's when officially the Rangers can afford Patrick Kane. So, 4:35-ish, we should get the total details, but I've not seen anything about protections on that first round pick. So we'll let you know as it comes out, but as of now, it doesn't look that way.
I think there's only so many conditions you can put on a pick specifically. So I don't know if you can say, well, it's a conditional second if they make the Eastern Conference Finals, then it becomes a first. Well, it's a protected for. I don't know if you can do that, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think you can only do one condition where it's a top 10 protected pick and that's it. I don't know if you can say, if the draft is on a Thursday at 8:30 p.m., it's a fourth round pick. But if it's on a Wednesday, it's a second round. These things are starting to these draft picks are starting to become more conditioned than my hair, and that's a problem.
Hey,
speaking of draft picks, you see what the Leafs just did?
Yes.
Yeah. So much for the Leafs getting out of the first round.
The Leafs just traded 22-year-old defenseman Rasmus Sandin to the Washington Capitals for our old pal Eric Gustafsson and a first-round pick. I'm sorry, but I'd rather have Sandin now than Gustafsson.
They got Gus and a first?
First, yes. But still.
Sandin is then the Gustafsson's the throwaway in there at that point. You're basically trading to Sandin for that first-round pick.
And Sandin was getting pushed out because they just got McCabe.
That's a dumb trade. I'm sorry. I know you're getting a first-round pick for him, but
I take Eric Gustafsson back for a first-round pick, and I hate Eric Gustafsson.
Sure, yeah.
That's a 22-year-old defenseman.
I would much rather have Rasmus Sandin than Justin Holl or Connor Timmins or whoever else they got in their defensive group that they are going to be scratching. But maybe that first round pick gets flipped before Friday. Who knows?
Could be.
That's true. And if Eric Gustafsson is in the Maple Leafs lineup for the playoffs, oh boy, I think he's going to be watching a lot of those games with a bag of popcorn in his hand.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to be playing.
I don't know if something else is on the horizon for them, but that's an interesting one. Your playoff lineup with Eric Gustafsson. Yikes.
Yeah, I think Sandin's one of those guys that, was the hype machine in Toronto. Being a top prospect in Toronto makes you better than everybody else. And then he just wasn't performing. And now they can't wait to get rid of him. So, yeah, it's hard to trade away 22-year-old defenseman with high ceilings. But, hey, we've seen that here a few times. So, we feel your pain.
I've seen that happen.
Yeah. Sometimes they turn out to be really good, and sometimes they're just Adam Boquist.
Jake says Toronto was very lukewarm with Sandin. He got power play one time and didn't show enough, apparently. He's 22.
22
years old. Maple
Leafs don't have time for that. They got to win now.
Yeah, sure. We got a $2 super chat from D-Chan. Says, who gets moved, traded next? With the people we've been talking about all year, Max Domi is certainly on that list. Andreas Athanasiou is on that list of guys expected to move. Connor Murphy, which feels a little less likely now that Jake McCabe has been traded.
Yeah.
But look, there's a lot of guys. There's really no one safe.
Yeah.
Roster. I mean, there's no untouchables.
Well, it's funny. Like all the big pieces are gone now. McCabe, Lafferty, Kane, Jack Johnson obviously was a big piece. But yeah, to me, it feels like Athanasiou and Domi might be Friday trades. They might be guys that if they're moved, teams are like, hey, we still need to shore up our bottom six. Well, these guys are still available. Let's throw a second rounder out there and just see what happens. And that might be the case for those guys. I don't know if Connor Murphy gets moved.
I doubt it. I doubt it at this point. You need somebody.
You gotta have somebody
back there next year, and I think Connor Murphy is a Luke Richardson kind of guy. Plays the game, plays the way Luke Richardson, him and McKay both. So yeah, I think Domi, Athanasiou, maybe there's a surprise out there. Maybe somebody wants a Jason Dickinson, but I think again that's probably more next year because doesn't he have another year left?
Yeah.
You know, had Colin Blackwell not pulled his groin, maybe that's a guy that, you know, somebody gives you a 6th round pick for because they want a penalty kill guy. You know, it's happened before. But yeah, Domi, Athanasiou, and if those do happen, those are probably going to come really close to the deadline. Which is a good way to remind you that we will be on the air for 2 hours on Friday. We will be on the air starting at 1 p.m. So we'll be on the air for the entire last hour of the trade deadline, and we'll stay all the way through the actual deadline at 2 p.m. Central, and then for another hour till 3 p.m. Hopefully there's something to talk about, but the way this is going, there's not going to be a single trade for anybody on Friday.
It's going to be a recap show.
This is like a lot. I mean, I know every year there are trades that happen well before the deadline. It just seems that, like, as far as big pieces go, this is a lot of guys moving super early. Like, we'd get little trades here, your Christopher Stieg type trades, your secondary players, and then there's always those big pieces of the pie still left for Friday. But that's not really the case this season. Like, who's the best player? Jacob Chychrun? Does he finally get traded? Talk about,
Chychrun, yeah.
God, as long as we've talked about Kane, imagine our pals over at PHNX, how tired they are of will he or won't he with Jacob Chychrun.
Really.
But it sounds like the Oilers are trying to
ramp up
that. And man, why the hell not? That makes you a Western Conference favorite.
Well, and speaking of the Oilers, I saw Charlie the Bacon guy mention that Carolina might be interested in Max Domi. Carolina traded for Jesse Puljujarvi today. Finally, the world's most popular 0.3 points per game player in the world.
Couldn't they have just claimed him on waivers 2 weeks ago and got him for nothing? I know they didn't give up anything for him, but it's like, why didn't you just claim him on waiver?
I don't get the whole thing with Puljujarvi. Like, I know he was a high draft pick, but he can't make it work with McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah, you can't score with those guys. You're not scoring with anybody.
And maybe it's just a culture thing. Maybe it's a fit thing. Maybe he goes and thrives in Carolina. But I had nothing against the kid. Seems like a wonderful kid. But I am so tired of hearing a Jesse effing Puljujarvi all the time.
Yeah.
My God. Like, what are we doing? This guy, he's like 112 points in like 300 plus games.
Yeah, he's another version of Yakupov again, except I don't think he has the attitude problem. I think it's the Oilers community around him.
Yeah, definitely. We also had a super chat from West Wash 97. Says, will the Kyle Beach scandal taint Kane's legacy? Well, I think that question is more for the individual fan and the individual person, right? Like, there's some people that the day Bobby Hull died were mad that we mentioned that he beat the crap out of his wife and was a Nazi sympathizer. Some people just don't care. Some people do. For me, I'll be honest with you. Like, yeah, I think that whole era, that whole 2010 team is not quite as romantic and thrilling and as close to my heart as they were a year and a half ago, because I can't think of that team now without thinking of how they've let down their teammate, Kyle Beach. And look, guys make mistakes. They're teenagers. They're in their 20s. We don't know who knew exactly what when. But, I will say this. Of the two, Kane was the more thoughtful between him and Taves when he was asked about it, right? He had kind of a more sympathetic and empathetic response than Jonathan Taves, saying like, well, I don't know why I got to say his name because for context, but I don't know why Stan Bowman loses his job. He was always good to me.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, that's so legacy tainting. That's for time to decide. And I think that is an individual fan by fan basis.
And let's be honest, when it comes to Patrick Kane, there's more than the Kyle Beach thing that can make it tainted for people.
There's more that he's a little bit more directly involved in.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, that's a discussion for another time, another place, but it's not just the Kyle Beach that can make people go, I didn't really like that guy.
And for me, I'll flat out say it, like, that stuff really rubbed me the wrong way. I was never really that into Patrick Kane as a fan or whatever because of it. It's like,
I agree.
I'm not
I was the
trying
same
to,
way.
not because he's traded now. It's not because of that. It had always, ever since the stuff happened, and not just the allegations in Buffalo, but the assault on the cab driver and the Madison stuff, and every girl under 20s had a Patrick Kane story. Like, it's not my dude.
There were a lot of times where it'd be like, if I had younger nieces or nephews or cousins, and they'd be like, I want a Patrick Kane jersey, I'd be like, how about you go for the Jonathan Taves or the Duncan Keith?
Right.
But he's the excited kids today still love him, and it's some people can separate all that and they don't care. They just want him to score goals and be an exciting player. And if that's how you operate, that's how you operate. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. But again, that's a topic we could dedicate probably 2 full shows to and have people screaming at us.
All right. Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us here. Reminder, we're on again tonight after Hawks and Coyotes. It will be 90% Patrick Kane tonight, too. I promise you.
It might be 99%.
Yes.
We might tell you the final score and then continue this conversation.
Let's do 88% Patrick Kane.
There you go.
There we go.
Sounds good. So if you're checking us out for the first time, again, thank you. Welcome. Check out allchgo.com. Become a diehard. You get a free shirt or hat upon sign up, and every year on renewal. It's a great deal there. You save 20% on all CHGO events, including our tailgates, our takeovers. You save 20% on every piece of merchandise in the CHGO locker. It really pays for itself, and you get access to our great written content like the rebuild report that Mario and Greg put together every week. And that's going to become more and more important as the years go on here. So you're going to want to check that out, allchgo.com.
Hopefully it starts being less important.
Yeah. And Charlie the Bacon Guy is picking up my tab for mentioning He Who Shall Not Be Named.
Nice.
Thanks, Charlie, for the $2 super chat. I appreciate that. Nice. So we'll talk to you tonight after Hawks and Coyotes. Oh, before we go, we got to update the poll results. What do we got, Steven?
Oh, yeah.
How did things end here?
All right, taking a look at it right now. We are...
Away.
So where does Patrick Kane rank among your all-time favorite Blackhawks? 49% said he was their favorite. Top 3 was second.
49?
49%, correct.
Oh, okay.
Top 3 was second with 34. Top 5, 11%. And top 10, 6%.
Yeah.
I think we identified the age group amongst our listeners.
Definitely.
Hey, I mean, yeah, top 3. I would put him in.
Yeah, I'd put him in my top 3.
I'd probably put him in my top 3. And of guys that I saw play, I think he's easily top 3.
Yeah, for sure.
Favorites? See, I'm weird. My favorites are always like...
Favorite to me does not mean best.
Yeah, favorite and best are different.
Yeah.
Favorite is still Roenick. Sorry, it's the guy that made me love hockey. Sounds like a good topic for August.
I think we did that one, but we can do it again.
We did that in August.
But we got all these new listeners.
Yeah, all these new listeners. It'll be
new to everybody who hasn't heard it.
Exactly. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. One final reminder. We are presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook. Download the app and use promo code CHGO when you sign up. We'll be back after Hawks, Coyotes, puck drops at 8, so look for us around 10:30, 10:45 on the CHGO Blackhawks podcast.